So this is a takeaway for everyone. Your development is necessary to help others succeed, so you can't forget about yourself in this equation.
Are you trying to be a better leader, change industries, reset after a layoff, or just looking for ways to bring your whole self to work? Well, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome to the Connect the Dots podcast, where I am focused on helping you through these situations and more by sharing real life stories and practical tips. I'm here to support you through coaching and mentorship, along with some amazing guests.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Connect the Dots. I'm your host, Heather Balsaric. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white woman with short strawberry blonde hair. I am wearing a dark navy shirt with gold polka dots, and I have on tortoiseshell glasses. I'm sitting in front of a teal wall that is covered in different art pieces. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome in. So glad you're here. And for those who have returned, thank you so much for coming on back and spending some time with me. So a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend the Training Industry Conference at Expo. And I'm really excited to share some of the things that I learned with you. But before we get there, if you are not familiar with what Training Industry Inc. is, let me give you a little bit of backstory, kind of bring you into the fold a little bit about what this conference is, who it was put on by. So this is a blurb from their website. They said, Training Industry serves as an expert resource for learning professionals seeking information about best practices and innovative approaches for developing effective training and create an environment of trust and information sharing among learning professionals, including those in the learning and development function and experts from companies serving the training industry. So just a short insight here, and there's a ton more available on their website, which is trainingindustry.com. And if you are part of learning and development or the training community in any way, or if you're interested in it, if you haven't been to their website, please go. After you listen to this episode, though, because it is truly just a treasure chest of articles and infographics and things that you can download. I have such a backlog of things I need to read from emails and the things that I get from them because it's all so good. And for those of you who may be thinking, Heather, I'm not in the training industry. This episode's not going to apply to me. I'm just going to go ahead and skip. No. Now listen, I would not bring you something that would not help you. Let me assure you that the tips that I'm going to share are applicable to everyone. And I will make sure that I connect those dots along the way. So keep listening because I promise you're going to learn something. So this was my first TICE event. And honestly, it was my first quote unquote, work related event or conference. I've been to a couple different conferences, but they weren't so industry specific. And even though I was going by myself, I was still just very excited because I had booked this conference back in February. And if you remember, if you've been around for a couple months, I was laid off at that point. And so I booked this at a time where, in my head, I thought, well, if I don't have a job in June, this might be the opportunity to connect with some different vendors and maybe I could find a role or just go and get more information, right? Keep my learning and development going. And the intentions of going to the conference in February were definitely different than when I actually went a few weeks ago. And I'm very thankful for that because, going to the conference now, it was all about what can I learn? What can I bring back to my peers? What can I bring back to my team? What things can I learn to make the program that I'm developing right now even better than I had ever imagined? Or how can I just make things better in general by going into this conference, and what can I bring back? So I was so excited because there was just so much to learn, and I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn it all. I wish I could have gone to all of the sessions, but you can't because they overlap, and I haven't cloned myself yet, so that's not a skill I have. Throughout the whole thing, my whole goal was just trying to dive in and fill my learning bucket. I was in L&D heaven discussing challenges and successes with other training professionals and hearing new things and what other people did. And AI was a huge topic at the conference. And I learned more than I could ever share with you right now, especially over just a couple of podcasts. So I'm going to do my best to share my top takeaways between probably the next 3 episodes. I'm nervous to say 2. So I'm going to say probably 3. So probably over the next 3 episodes, make sure that you're coming back for part 2 and 3 because there is some really, really good stuff in here. I did pick a total of 15 takeaways from the conference. There were a ton more. So if you've seen the infographic that I put up in my Substack newsletter or over on LinkedIn, I put a bunch of my big learnings on there, and I'll make sure that you link it down in the show notes as well so that you can see my TICE takeaway infographic. And speaking of newsletters, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, why not? It's free. Just go to the polkadotdesk.substack.com and you can sign up for the email newsletter today. It's super easy. The polkadotdesk.substack.com. Okay, back to our regular programming. But I picked 15 things out, and we're going to cover 6 of them today because all 6 of these came from the same keynote session. Are we ready? Let's go ahead and dive right in. So day 2 opened up with a keynote panel discussion, and the topic was the skills of the modern learning leader. And for a little more context, I'm just going to read you the description from the actual program. And so I've got it here. If you're watching online, you can see I've got it up. It's very beautiful. And I'll put some more pictures on the screen as well. But let me read you the description so you can kind of get the backstory of like the purpose of this panel. So it says, modern learning leaders require a unique set of skills to succeed in their roles. With the increased use of technology and changing demands of business, the learning leader's role has evolved significantly. This keynote panel discussion aims to share practical insights from learning leaders for current and aspiring learning leaders. You will hear unique perspectives from successful leaders as they discuss their careers in learning and development, how they keep pace with the demand to develop new skills themselves and within their teams, and where they foresee L&D in the future. Now, before I get into talking about the panel, one thing you need to know is that a majority of these individuals have the credentials CPTM after their name. So do I. I have this credential after my name as well. And it stands for Certified Professional of Training Management. And this is a credential that the training industry actually does. They do the certification practicum, the tests, they manage all of that, the recertification, all those little things to make this a valuable program. And CPTM is a product from the training industry. So if you hear me say that, that is what it is. And so hopefully those dots connect for you there. All right, let's go ahead and move forward because I'm ready to get in and tell you some more. So the moderator for this panel was Dr. Crystal Walker, CPTM. She's the Vice President of Employee Wellbeing at Sweetwater Sound. The panel included Amy Duvernay, PhD and CPTM, who is the Director of Training and Development for Training Industry. We have Erin Elizabeth Goldman, CPTM, Manager of People Development at ZipRecruiter. We had Audrey Morales, VP of Enterprise Learning and Development at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. And we had Chris Castle, CPTM. He's the Director of Sales for Development Operational Excellence for Aligned Technologies, Inc. So the panel is packed with people from different industries and backgrounds and insights. Before I dive in, I'm going to run these 6 down for you so you have some insight on the things that we're going to talk about today. So the first one was, my development is necessary to help others succeed. Then take time to understand the business. Be flexible in learning modalities. Move from reactive to proactive to predictive. What is the work of the future, not the future of work? And learning and development is at the center of the employee lifecycle. So hopefully one of those kind of piqued your interest a little bit, if not all of them. And let's jump in, right? We're going to go to that very first one. The first takeaway that I'm going to talk about came from Amy Duvernay. So she was speaking about leading a team of training professionals who train training professionals and how she stays motivated, how she keeps them motivated too. And I can understand from Amy's viewpoint. She's the director of training and development for training industry. All you do is training development for training development professionals. This can be difficult, right? It can be really hard. And so what she said just really spoke to me so much. And that was that my development is necessary to help others succeed. And so staying motivated and continually learning, continually, developing your skills, that's necessary to help others succeed in the learning and development community. And a lot of times that we talk about how, we do the development for everybody at the company, but who does development for us, right? When do we get developed as a learning and development team? Because unfortunately, sometimes learning and development is the department that doesn't get to learn and develop themselves. And this is why it really stuck out to me, because it's something that's really important to me. Hence one of the reasons I went to the conference, because I have to continue to develop so that I can help other people succeed. And to connect this outside of the learning and development world, right, whatever industry you're in, how does this look in leadership? So let's go back and think about Amy Duvernay. She's a leader. She knows that if she's not continuing to develop, she won't be able to help her team succeed. So if she was just the director of sales for a company, right? She's a leader. She has to continue to develop her skills in the world of sales to be able to help her team succeed. If you think about a doctor or a nurse, they have to do continuing education. Their development is necessary to help others succeed. If your doctor or nurse is not going and getting those continuing education credits, not continuing to learn new practices and insights and research, how are they going to be able to bring to you, their patient, the things that are going to help you succeed, the things that are going to help their patient get better? So this is a takeaway for everyone. Your development is necessary to help others succeed, so you can't forget about yourself in this equation. The second takeaway I had from this, from the panel, was from Chris. And he was talking about how you have to take time to understand the business. I feel like this was such a theme that stuck out to me throughout the conference. Like understanding the business, understand the business goals. Are you aligned with the business? Do you know what the business wants? Because all of these things, right? If you're not taking the time to understand the business and the goals that the business has, and then your programs aren't going to align with them. And if your programs don't align with them, they're not going to help your customer, right? Your end user, your learner, they're not going to get buy-in from leadership because they don't match what the business needs. So you have to take time to understand the business. And I feel like this is something that when you look outside the world of L&D, right, taking time to understand the business, you have to think about, like, what does that mean to me? Because depending on where you are in the organizational hierarchy, your access or view of the business will be different. When I worked in the cell phone industry and I started as a sales rep, my understanding of the business was, focused on technology, the products, the plans, etc. I had to explain these things to the customer. So on the internal side of the business, I needed to also understand the compensation plan, the commission plan, right? My company had goals they needed to meet, and I needed to understand how, as much as I could, about why they wanted to do what they were doing, why they were setting the goals they were setting, and understanding how that related back to my paycheck, right? So taking time to understand the business was important. But moving into like leadership roles, you may not be close to profit and loss statements, budgets, or strategic meetings for the company. So again, it can feel like it's hard to understand the business. And I know I probably did not do the best job at this when I was younger, and it is absolutely a learned skill. But you want to take the time to understand what you do, how what you do fits into the business cycle. How does what you do support the business goals, right? Take that time to understand. Let's say, for example, you work in a call center, right? You're taking phone calls every day. Right? What can you do to understand the business and how your role supports it? What is the impact you make and how can you align with your company goals? So take the time to understand the business. Ask questions so that you can align yourself with them. The third takeaway, I cannot remember who said it, so my apologies. I think it was either Erin or Audrey. So it was one of those two ladies that said it. So, but it was about being flexible in learning modalities. Now, if you don't want to know precisely what a learning modality is, this just simply means how you're presenting learning, right? Is it an e-learning? Is it online? You're just clicking through the buttons. Is it a video? Is it an in-person training? Is it a virtually led training? Or is it just a one-pager to read? Or is it what they call a micro-learning, right? Something that's maybe small and bite-sized. There are so many different modalities. And as the industry is changing, as far as technology and the things that we have at our disposal, as the industry is changing as far as technology and the things we have at our disposal, we've got to learn to be flexible. And I think about this from the aspect of if you understand the business, if you understand what your business does, what your customer, your end user, your learner needs, then you can start to be flexible in how you're giving them the information. Just thinking about being flexible makes me think about right at the beginning of COVID, when everyone moved from on-site to at home, and the way that training had to flex. Some companies weren't doing any type of virtual training. So they were, all in the office. They don't need it. But then all of a sudden, nobody's in the office. Everybody's at home. They have to figure out how to make this happen over a camera. So they had to be flexible in that moment, in that time. So if you're setting yourself up for success, you're learning how to be flexible ahead of time. When you're thinking about a program, like if you're developing something, starting to think about it, think, okay, how can I make this into a virtually led session? Or how can I make this into a micro-learning? How can I make this into a self-directed course? Or how can I take these micro-learnings and make them into something that they could do in team meetings or as an instructor-led training even? Be flexible. So go ahead. Think ahead. How can I be flexible in what I'm doing? Let's think about this outside the L&D space. What does this mean for someone that is not in learning and development to be flexible in learning modalities as a leader? So as a leader, be flexible in the way that you approach your team. Understanding that everybody may learn a little differently, may need to take some time on one thing, and somebody may not on another. Some people talk through things out loud. Some people don't. But be flexible in that engagement with your peers, your direct reports, your leaders. And if you're not a leader, you're an individual contributor maybe, being flexible in how you interact with those around you and understand that things may have to change based on what is happening, that's how you can also be flexible. So going back to the point before, you want to take time to understand the business, because if you've taken the time to understand the business, it can help you be flexible when you need to, because you can see it coming. You've already made those adjustments. You've already thought through that. You understand how to be flexible when it comes to what you're doing. The fourth thing also comes from Chris. I wish I remember what the question was, but I don't. But he talked about the goal for learning leaders, that it needs to be that we move from reactive to proactive to predictive. So in the learning and development space, one of the things that happens a lot of times is the business will come to the training department and say, oh my gosh, our CSAT numbers have fallen. We need training on this right away. It's a very reactive process. So we're reacting to what the business is doing. We're trying to solve a problem that's already there. So we have to do some root cause analysis. We need to figure out, is this training even really needed, or is it a different problem? So if you're having to do a lot of this work in a reactive state, it's hard. So you really want to start moving from reactive to proactive. And again, that's part of understanding the business and being flexible. So to be proactive, let's think about this. So I'm going to go back to my call center experience, but this type of call comes in over the holidays a lot, right? So we're thinking about that. So we're going to be proactive. And we're going to make sure that our newer employees and our current employees are very well versed in this common call type, because the holidays are coming. We know. So we're being proactive with training because we know it's the cycle of the business. This is what comes next. So we're going to be proactive. We're going to provide this information. And those are two things that I've always heard about: reactive and proactive. And you want to go from one to the other. But Chris added that third one in, predictive. And this is where that understanding the business and really starting to understand the metrics and the measurement of outcomes and the expected outcomes, the forecasting of what your business is doing, you're going to be able to start to predict the things that are needed. So you can start to see, right, looking ahead, right, 3 to 5 years on that business plan, right? The company's looking to grow. You know that based on that, we can predict that we need to do X, Y, Z to this training, right? We need to do this faster, whatever that case may be. But you stop reacting to things and working from behind to saying, okay, this is the cycle. I want to be proactive. I know that this is coming. Let me go ahead and do it. To being able to say, you know what? I know previously something like this happened. So if we're going to focus on this goal and these are some outcomes, well, I would predict that we would need to do this. And then you can start to bring those solutions to your leaders. You can bring them to the business and say, hey, based on these things, because I understand your business and I can be flexible in what I'm offering you, I can predict that this will be of service. So you move and you progress. Now, will you have reactive things that you do? Absolutely, 100%. I don't think that's ever really going to go away because it happens. And you're still going to need to be proactive about things. But getting to that predictive part, that is the goal. You want to learn to live there more than you're living in the other two. So when I think about this, like outside the L&D space and just leadership in general, and again, when I talk about leadership, I mean leadership from where you are, right? Whether you have a team or you're an individual contributor, it doesn't matter. Everyone has the opportunity to be a leader. Just wanted to level set that with you, make sure we're all on the same page here. But looking at this and moving from reactive to proactive to predictive, when we look at this from just a leader standpoint, it's the same concept. As a leader, you can be reactive to something that one of your employees has done. So think about when I was managing call center teams. Somebody would get a bad customer satisfaction survey, so I would have to go listen to the call, and then I'd have to provide them with coaching. It's a reactive coaching because I'm having to react to something that has already happened. So how can I be proactive about it? How can I proactively help the team and my individuals, right, not get a bad CSAT score? I can be predictive in just knowing that there are things that people call about that, need a certain way to handle them, right? Let's talk about how to overcome them. Let me train them how to do it. Let's be proactive and learn how to solve these problems versus getting that phone call and going, I don't know. And then you have that whole reactive chain start again, right? You're reacting back to that CSAT survey. You're having to go back and do things. So being proactive, teaching things to them as they come online so they can hopefully avoid that reactive scenario too. But predictive. When I think about this, it's an interesting concept in terms of leadership because you're trying to be predictive about what they need, right? You can't do that unless you know the business. You can't be predictive in a way that's helpful to your team or to your peers unless you know the business. And one of the best examples that I can give is when I worked on the onboarding team. And every year we would be hiring, and we would start this hiring process months before we actually started hiring, doing interviews. And we would have to think about, okay, we're trying to be very proactive versus reactive in terms of like how we're going to go through everything. So, but it was also a huge thing that we needed to be in the predictive space. We knew that from past data, like what our attrition rate was, what our acceptance rate was on interviews. And so proactive meant, hey, we know what happened last year. It was this. So this year, if we want to hit these numbers, then we need to do this. We need to predict how many interviews we need in order to meet the needs of the business. If I did not understand, first, how the recruiting department worked, second, how the onboarding process worked, and third, the toll that it took on interviewers if we scheduled them for too many interviews or asked too much of them. If I didn't know that, if I didn't understand those pieces, I would not have been able to predict effectively and provide the support and assistance, effectively to the team. And so this is something that you can do anywhere that you are, right? Move from reactive to proactive to predictive. Make that your goal. Okay. The next thing on the list, it also comes from Chris. Chris had a lot of great things to say in this panel. And he said that we don't need to think about the question being, what is the future of work, right? We don't need to think about what does work look like in the future. Does it look like AI helping, taking jobs? Does it look like everyone going back to the office, right? Don't ask that question. You want to ask, what is the work of the future? And when you flip that, right, what is the work of the future, not what is the future of work, it really resets your mindset. So thinking about the AI comment I just made, if you think about what is the future of work and you think AI is going to take all our jobs, people are just going to make e-learnings with AI. I'm never going to get to do anything else because AI is going to take my job. It's not AI, right? AI requires a partnership with some uniquely human aspects that we have, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I did learn some AI things at the conference, but I'm going to set that to the side. But think about it like this. If we think about it in terms of what is the work of the future. So the work of the future may be that, AI. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take the AI system. We're going to embed it within our secure network. So it's not going to be all the outside stuff, right? It's just the AI is just working with our internal information. And I'm going to be able to say, hey, AI, give me an outline for a presentation on selling the cogs that we make. It gives me an outline. Then I can take the outline and I can say, yep, that looks good. That looks good. Ooh, that's wrong. Let me make an adjustment. Let me fix it. And then I can take it and say, hey, learning design team, hey, here's an outline for what we need. Can you make this? Right? It's cut down some time for me. That's the work of the future, right? It's working with the AI system to help you do things faster. Let it do the hard work for you. Let it do the research for you. And the work of the future is us. And this is just an example, right? But the work of the future is using AI to make our jobs easier, to make our jobs faster, to be able to be more flexible, to be more predictive. And hopefully at this point, right, you've taken time to understand the business. You know, you're able to go to them and say, hey, this is the work of the future. This is what I'll be doing in the future, right? You're not asking, what will the L&D department look like, right? What is the future of L&D? No. What is the L&D work of the future? What is that? That puts you in control when you say it that way. You're in control of the work of the future and how you begin to interact with those things. So I hope this is making sense to everybody. So when we think about that, right, when we start to think about this concept outside of L&D, right, what is the future, or what is the work of the future, not what is the future of work? So when we think about leadership in general, right, it's not what is the future of leadership. It's what is the leadership of the future, right? We're going to replace that word work, replace it, right? Not what is the future of sales. It's what are the sales of the future? Flipping that script is you owning it. What is the leadership of the future? What do you need to do to be leading there? And that is so key because, again, it goes back to everything that we've talked about so far, right? Being able to think about the leadership of the future, that leadership or that leader needs to be predictive, needs to be flexible, needs to understand the business, and it needs to make sure it's continuously developing. That leader is you, by the way, if you hadn't made that connection. So this all builds on each other. And I just thought about this. And so I'm going to phrase it to you one more way, and then I'm going to move on to the last one. But it's not what is the future of you, but what is the you of the future? What development are you going to do to help others succeed in the future? What are you going to do to understand the business for the future? How can you be flexible for the future? And then how can you be predictive for the future? I just want you to think about it. All right, number 6, the last one. Learning and development is in the center of the employee lifecycle. And it really is. I could get on my soapbox about this, but because it never fails when cuts need to be made, L&D is usually the first one to go because so many companies run L&D as a cost center. They look at it as a cost center because it costs them money to do. But that's not what L&D is. We are not, right? We are the center of the employee lifecycle. And when you look at it like this, learning and development touches so many things when you have employees. Right? The employee life cycle, it starts with attracting an employee to your company, right? Job postings, the website. You're training that applicant basically. Because if your company has the resources and things for them to understand what your company does and things, then they want to get hired. Right? And they have all of the information they need to be able to make the connection with the company and to have a good interview. Right? And so they get hired. And the next part's onboarding. Right? Learning and development is developing. Right? We're developing that onboarding training. What do they need to know about being able to learn their job, to work for the company, to know where to get their benefits and all of that stuff? And then after they move out of the first 90 days of onboarding, and then they're moving into that kind of continuous training, right? Training and retention. And this is where they're learning skills to do the job. They're learning new skills to move up. And if you're working on the retention side of learning and development, it's going to be the talent development or leadership development teams. Right? They're going in and helping the employee level up their skills, learn a new skill set to continue to have them there at the company. And eventually, hopefully not eventually, but typically, what happens is, you have retention and then there's attrition. And so how L&D works in the attrition space is that offboarding, right? In that training, it's, how do you get the follow-up on benefits? How do they get their PTO if they accrued it? Whatever the case may be, L&D can still have a part in that because it's continuous training. If learning and development is not at the center of the employee life cycle, what is? Honestly, I would love to know. I would love to know your thoughts on this because I could be very biased. Because I'm a learning and development professional, but I do. So Because learning and development is what your employees do from the time they first look at your website to apply until the time that they leave. They are learning and developing in your company. And it's up to your company to decide what that learning and development looks like. Is it helpful? Is it reactive? Is it proactive? Is it predictive? Is it flexible? Does it go with the flow of the business and understand the business and what they need? It truly is the center of the employee lifecycle. And I think it's important to understand that because there really is so much that L&D does that and to, support employees and to support organizations. And I think some businesses just don't tap into it enough, right? They don't see the value that learning and development can bring to the company. They simply see it as that cost center. So learning and development at the center of the employee lifecycle. Let me connect those dots for you, right? So if you're outside of the learning and development space and you're a leader and you're thinking, well, how does this apply to me? I want you to think about it from where you are, right? What can you do to impact the learning and development of the employee lifecycle? If you're an individual contributor and maybe there's new people coming to your organization, how can you help them learn? How can you support them, right? How can you help them get up to speed with what's going on? If you're a leader of the team and you have new people coming in, or you have people that have been there for a while, think about when the last time they did a training other than one that was required. How are you helping them continually grow and learn? So that's how this fits in. We all have a part in this. I know I've been talking for a while, so let me run through those 6 again, just to kind of catch you back up, okay? So the first thing I shared was my development is necessary to help others succeed. The second thing is to take time to understand the business. The third is to be flexible in learning modalities. Number 4 was move from reactive to proactive to predictive. Number 5, what is the work of the future, not what is the future of work? And finally, learning and development is at the center of the employee lifecycle. Whew, man, we made it. All right. So next week, I'm going to dive into some more. I have 9 left to cover. Yikes. So I probably, again, this will probably be a 3-part series because of how much information I want to share with you. I want to connect this stuff to you. So in 2 weeks, I will be back with more takeaways from Tice and how to apply them not only to learning and development, but to leadership in general and help you connect those dots around the concepts. And so until then, please make sure that you're connecting with me on all the social media things, right? At Ms. Heather B. on Instagram. And you can also find me on Threads. I haven't posted yet. I'm still just looking. We're going to try it out though. But I am over there. So we can figure this out together. I was never a Twitter person, so it's kind of weird. Anyways, make sure you check out the YouTube channel as well. If you want to watch the podcast, check out my website. If you want to support the podcast, hit me up on buymeacoffee.com/Ms. Heather B. All the links and stuff that you need are in the description below. And again, please be sure that you like, share, subscribe, follow, ring the bell, and shout hallelujah. And then we will see you next time. Remember though, you are loved and you are worthy, and there are great things ahead for you in this life if you trust and believe in the Lord. See you next time. Bye.